Welcome to the Ottawa International Writers Festival. Our 2020 virtual season is broadcasting from the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Neil Wilson. I'm the founder and development director of the Ottawa International Writers Festival and co-founder of the Republic of Childhood. Andri Snaer Magnason is an award-winning Icelandic writer of plays, fiction, nonfiction, science fiction. He's a filmmaker, social activist, and a writer of children's stories, and he's the only writer to win the Icelandic Literary Award in all categories. The Casket of Time is his latest book for children to be translated into English. And I would like to share something from Kelly Barnhill, writing in the New York Times Book Review. And she had this to say about The Casket of Time. I love this book so much. It is a cerebral tale, well told, and unabashedly philosophical. So grim, and here she could have been punning on the Grimm brothers, so grim that I fear it will not be for everyone. But despite the beheadings, the grave robbing, the people being thrown to the lions, the central message of the book is clear, and it is welcome. Greed hurts, power ruins us, and time has never been our enemy. Indeed, Magnason reminds us, as long as our tendency towards self-destruction doesn't get in the way, time is the Earth's and humanity's greatest healer. Welcome, Andri Snaer Magnason.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the kind words.
This is great. I think we should start. I'm hoping we can have a wide-ranging talk about human time, geologic time, and all in the context, of course, of children and youth, because this is, of course, a Writers' Festival event, but it's going to be programmed within the Republic of Childhood season. So I'd love to start with this amazing fairy tale, The Casket of Time. Could you set it up for us? Just the
Yes.
broad strokes?
Yes, so it's kind of a story on two levels. So basically it's this mad king. You always need a mad king. And he's obsessed with, he has accomplished everything. He has everything that he could possibly, he has won everything that he could possibly win. That is, he has conquered the entire world. And gets this great remorse that he won't have time to enjoy everything that he's accomplished. That is, he calculates that he could never even all his castles, and to drink all his wine, he would need to drink like bottles a day, and he could never even count his horses. And but his greatest grief that his beautiful princess, the apple of his eye, she will just grow old and die like any worthless peasant. Like she wasn't more valuable than everything in the world. She could just randomly die someday, or at most live as just a normal person. So he thinks this is totally unfair. He doesn't get more time than others, and calls for a solution. And of course, nobody can give him more time. And so poets claim they can preserve eternity in a poem, but what's that worth? So of course he throws them to the lions, and then dwarves come, because every fairy tale needs a dwarf. And the dwarves have something that looks like a glass casket, but it's not made of glass. It's woven with spider silk, and it's so densely woven that time cannot penetrate the walls. So when the casket is closed, and the person inside just feels like no time passes. So if he closes the casket and opens an hour, a week, a month, a year later, the person inside just feels like a second passed. the problem was that the casket was made for dwarves, so it only fits the princess, not the king. But he can seal her away from the vicious time that detour kind of eventually takes everything from every single king. And this works well to begin with. He can remove the Mondays. Imagine, our lives, that we've spent 1/7 of our life on Mondays. It's a terrible waste of time. And then Februaries, Novembers, Trump years, so he could remove kind of all this time that is wasted, and only give her the quality time, only the Instagram moments of life. And so this works well to begin with, but the princess becomes so precious and so special that in the end it takes like 2 years to prepare the perfect moment in her life, and they have to kind of prepare this day for a long time to make it seamlessly perfect from morning to evening. And of course, life becomes totally bizarre in her because she doesn't. So one day it's a spring day, and suddenly it's a beautiful winter day, and then suddenly it's a winter day again, but it seems like it's not the same winter, and everything becomes so confusing and crazy. So the story is on 2 levels. One level is this level of the princess and the king, the Mad King, and the other level is in our time when an entity that seems like IKEA or something has made these magic boxes that we can actually use to do what the king was doing, remove the unimportant moments from our lives and avoid troublesome time. And, like in America, everybody's waiting for the election. You could just crawl into the box and come out as soon as everything is clear. And if the wrong person wins, you can just press a dial and the box will open like this after 4 years. So you don't have to tolerate, live through these times that you maybe don't appeal to you. The coronavirus, you could just decide that it would open as soon as that thing is over. So you can avoid all the uncomfortable things. And this, again, works well to begin with, but then people predict a very bad and boring year, kind of like we're living in now. And people decide to skip the year. But what happens is too many people decide to skip the year. So there's actually enough to run the world. So when the boxes open up again, everything is kind of overgrown with weeds and leaves and rusted and not working. So people decide to wait until the world becomes better. And of course, the world never becomes better if everybody's waiting for the world to become better. Yeah, these are the 2 levels of the story.
And of course,
I hope I didn't spoil everything.
No. And of course, teenagers and children come to the rescue. We've got this teenager,
Yes.
Sigrun, who meets up with Grace, who is a researcher. And it turns out that there's a curse. And
yes,
the only way to overcome the curse is for these kids to deal with it, to go on a huge adventure. And of course, Sigrun sees the parallels between the tale of Obsidiana and the present day crisis and realizes it's up to her. In other words, the adults, her parents included, have typically, in most cases, failed them, and they are pushed into the front lines, as it were, and they sacrifice their lives, in a sense, to break the curse and fix the world. Now, the Casket of Time was published originally in Icelandic in 2013, and that was long before Fridays for Future and the widespread activism by children and youth. And I'd love it if you wouldn't mind.
We lost him.
Oh, we lost it?
Oh, he's back.
Okay.
Did you lose me? I'm back, I think.
Okay, you're back now. Did you hear what I was saying, Andri? We can edit this, but...
Yeah, I think I got most of it, yeah.
Okay.
I got most of it. So Yeah, actually, it's a funny thing that I make this. I thought it was maybe a bit unreal that the kids would. So what happens is when everybody has decided to wait for better times, the casket or the black box that Sigrun was in breaks, and so she can't escape time anymore, and she encounters this city that is basically overgrown with trees, and nature has invaded her house, and basically everybody decided to and avoid all responsibility. So they find this. She finds some other kids that, and their boxes also malfunctioned, and they find this old lady called Grace, and she's telling them the story of the princess and kind of how these magic caskets came to. And so these stories start weaving together, and they have to find a way to fix the world and how to get things started again. And they will go on a journey to find who's the boogeyman behind this. You know, who decided to put this spell on the world, so everybody would decide to just everything and wait for better times and make everything fall apart while doing so, not responsibility. And I don't want to spoil the whole book, but it seems like they don't really find anyone that is totally responsible for doing this. It seems just to be like some common trend to not want important things and push things further into the future. And maybe there might be some secret parallel that how we're acting to global warming and big problems. That it's always the next term that has to solve it, or it's somebody else's fault, and you don't have to deal with it. Sorry, my daughter is calling. Just have to tell her. Elin, mamma is ekki, þú voru að syngja hana. Okay, bye. Sorry, I'm navigating my kids' control center here. So the kids, they have to kind of take responsibility, and it's actually quite interesting to see how the children of the world have taken of grown-ups and are showing responsibility by making these organizations Friday for the Future and all these things. And my latest book on time and water is quite a lot about that issue in a more less fairy tale way.
I'd like to jump there, Andri Snaer. Hopefully, On Time and Water will be available in Canada early in 2021. We've got our fingers crossed for that. And
it's already in Montreal.
It's in Montreal.
It's already out in Canadian, yes.
Okay. You talk about, you say, when a system collapses, language is released from its moorings. Words meant to encapsulate reality hang simply in the air, no longer applicable to anything. Textbooks are rendered obsolete overnight, and over-complex hierarchies fade away. People suddenly find it difficult to hit upon the right phrasing to articulate concepts that match their reality. I mean, that's an incredible subject to be dealing with, and it's absolutely so relevant today that we've complicated things so much that we can't see the forest for the trees, or we can't see the streams from the glaciers, or however you want to say it.
Yeah. Yes, the idea is kind of, I'm just 40 something, but still, like in Iceland, we had this huge collapse of the banking system, and the house next door to the third biggest bankruptcy in capitalist history was the house where Reagan and Gorbachev met, and right. Kind of symbolizes the fall of the Soviet Union. So you could see so clearly kind of how when an ideology falls, a language and a system of explaining reality collapses with it. And I had friends in the university when the bank system failed, and the textbooks were still trying to teach like the great deals that had already proven to fail. And that also applies to lots of the things that people are studying today about, rational things that we're doing today are being taught even after climate science has told us, sorry, this is not rational. This is not. This does not fit what we need to do if humanity is going to survive the next 100 years. But still, people are being taught methods that have been obsolete. So the idea, kind of in my book, is that climate science is very boring. It tends to be like And when I told people I was writing about change, they were like, oh. But when I told people I'm writing about time and water, they were like, wow, interesting. So it seemed like the most important issue of today that we have to talk about had become something that people were trying to become immune to. So we have to talk about it, and maybe the role of the artist, of the writer, is to break through this immunity and make the subject new again. So the idea is that when I start writing about it, is that language kind of collapses, because how do I say that we're talking about the glacier leaving geological speed entering human speed. So glaciers that be for thousands of years kind of stable are vanishing in a lifetime of somebody born today, becoming as old as my grandmother is now. How do I say that, like scientists predict the oceans to change more in the next 100 years? That is the pH, the acidification of the oceans. I can say the oceans will change more in the next 100 years than in the previous 50 million years. What I said is bigger than language. I can't say it's big to the 12th degree. So acknowledge that language collapses, because when I said this, I didn't really say it, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
So like, because you have to stop. You have to say, wait a minute, you did not understand what I said, and I did not understand what I said. 50 million years, what is that? It's a word, but if the oceans are changing more in the next 100 than in the previous 50 million years, we're talking about not only a longer time than the whole evolution of man, that is, which we estimate is about 5 million years. So we're talking about a single human being is living a greater chain of oceans than not only the whole evolution of man, but a 10 times longer time than the whole evolution of man. And there you have a scale of mythology, actually. It's not history, it's mythology.
Absolutely. And this is where children's writing and the Casket of Time, and perhaps even the mental constructions, the psychic condition of young people, children and youth, can understand. They're not dealing with all of this ingrained ancient knowledge, economic, political, and ecological, that many of us old timers have been steeped in for centuries.
Yeah, and also I think what I'm dealing with is actually, and I'm quite a lot addressing people that might be, 15. I talk a lot to young people, from pre up to university level, and it's a hard fact for people my age that the universities are filled with people born 2000. So I'm grown with the year 2000 to be utopia. Like the far future was 2000, but now the university is full of people born in the year 2000, and we haven't culturally updated into date where we kind of project some kind of future images or fantasies or things like that. So often when I have a talk to kids that age or young people, I ask them a very simple question. When is someone alive that you will love? And they ask me, what do you mean? I say, I just told you a story of my grandmother. She's 96, and you guys, you're born the year 2000, and you probably expect you will become at least 90. Medication, and we believe that you'll be a cool 90-year-old, and you might be still in love, and you'll just be you'll just be a human being that has lived 90 years. You will not be faded away or something. You'll just be yourself, having lived 90 years. And ask them, imagine that you have a favorite 20-year-old in your life at that time, because your children will misunderstand you, because children misunderstand parents, but your grandchildren will understand you. So your favorite person that finally understands you is 20 years old, person born 2070. It's not sci-fi, it's just the continuity of our lives. So this person born 2070, you will have had the major impact on that person. You might have been his or her favorite person in your life. When is that person still talking about you as their greatest influence? And then do the calculation, okay, that person born 2070, that person becomes 90, still talking about me in the year 2160. So I tell them, imagine that now in the year 2020, you have to understand the person that you will love the most in your life is still out there in the year 2160. And you will have influenced this person for 20 years. It's not like slightly brushing against somebody's life. This will be the fundamental person in your life, even the most meaningful engagement you will have with another person. So I tell them, okay, 2160, that's your intimate date. That's the time of somebody you love the most or will love the most. What do you feel now about climate predictions about 2100? Do you feel like that is beyond your horizon, beyond your imagination? Or is that only halfway in your inner in your most intimate timescale? And I think this is also astonishing now when we have, pensionists running for office in the most powerful nation in the world. And so the university students of today, they will become as old as Biden and Trump in the year 2075. Imagine the difference of how they perceive time and the responsibility against the time scale. So university student today is the age of these guys running for president in the year 2075. And there's such a huge contrast in this, and must be also psychologically how you feel responsibility against time.
That's amazing. And Andri, Snaer, I must congratulate you and your colleagues who created the first memorial to a lost glacier, which is up for a prestigious Beasley Design of the Year award. If you wouldn't mind, would you maybe tell us the story of your poem and this glacier and your involvement?
Yes, so basically we have here the first glacier lost to climate change. That it was one of the smaller glaciers, of course, but all our glaciers, we are really showing how dramatically they are receding. So this glacier was declared lost, and two anthropologists from Texas, actually, Simony and Dominic, they were doing research on climate change, and they noticed that Iceland had lost its first glacier. And they were wondering, okay, if climate change is an event, like, Second World War, it's an event on a grand scale, when did it happen? When did it start? When did it finish? When were the historical moments in this great period? And they said, this first glacier deserves a monument. So they called me and they said, can you write the text for this? And I thought, okay, this is a strange thing, but of course I'm working on time and glaciers, and my grandparents, they were glacial explorers also. So yeah, I can probably do it. So I spent like a whole summer scratching my head. How do you write a eulogy for a glacier? Because one of my favorite passages from Kurt Vonnegut is when he was writing an anti-war book, and somebody asks him, why don't you write an anti-glacier book instead? Because there will always be wars, as there will always be glaciers. But now, only 50 years after this book was published, there will not always be glaciers. And so that hopefully means there will not always be wars. So the most absurd thing that Vonnegut could think of making an anti-glacier book, I end up writing a pro-glacier text. So what is it? What is it to write a pro-glacier text? And that is also a symbol of the level of where humanity is. That we did not believe that we could reach this impact of raising sea level or melting glaciers. So I thought, okay, this will be a text. When I write a book, I can't make a typo because it will be cast in bronze. so it will be that was one of the anxiety. But also, bronze will outlive the rock it stands on. So this could be a text that somebody could see after 500 years. So I was like, okay, I'm addressing my contemporaries, but I'm also addressing somebody that might stumble upon the mountain in 500 years. So I had to write the text addressing simultaneously somebody coming up there in a very long future, but also addressing us living here now. And the name of the glacier is interesting because Auk, it's the same as yoke, that is the beam that carries water. So it's the same word as yoke.
Wow.
So the glacier used to carry water, but now it's not carrying water again. And again, yoke has another meaning. It means burden also. So it has become a burden of the future generation. So I was trying to look for a phrasing, but I ended up with just a very basic note, like just saying this Auk Glacier is the first glacier, Icelandic glacier, to be lost to climate change. In the next 200 years, we expect all our glaciers to follow the same path. This monument is to acknowledge that we know what is happening and what needs to be done. Only you know if we did it. August 2019, 415 ppm of CO2.
Oh, that's incredible. Bringing it back to the next generations and human time and geologic time, what can you say to the children and youth of our day who are watching this catastrophe unfold, and many of them are being told to stay in school and to stop moaning, and yet the amount of trauma that they're undergoing is phenomenal?
Yeah, I had a hard time. I thought a lot about it because I was asked to talk about climate change to like a group of 15-year-olds. So I just scrambled together all the data and I just told them what was happening. And afterwards, I felt like really bad because I could see how I was like, just turning the lights off in their eyes. I could just see how they, went blank. And I didn't want to be like just presenting some doomsday scenarios. So I really thought, okay, when I was writing the book, I really had to grasp like the scale of things, but also put it into context with the struggles of past generations and science and what scientists believe that we can do or could do. So actually, according to many leading scientists that I spoke to, it is possible to address this. So that is a good thing. It would be quite bad if it was just like a comet striking us in an X time. We will have to address this. We will have to So I tell them that like when I talk to, again, 15, 20-year-olds, I tell them this is kind of the main challenge that will define this generation. It is foreseeable that we can change industries, we can't change habits, we can't change cultures. And it's not essentially bad to be a generation that has a big kind of higher meaning to almost everything they decide in their lives. So because whatever they do, what they do in their working life will be defined by this challenge. So if they become designers, engineers, cooks, or farmers, or it just does not matter what field they go into, they will have to be a revolutionary force in almost every single field, because almost everything has to be redesigned, remade, rethought, reconsidered, and that goes just to every single field of human activity. And it's not essentially a bad thing to be in that situation. And I tell them that if you just decide to go and make an oil-driven pickup, you will become a dinosaur before you're 30 and you'll be out of work. So if you decide to learn something about addressing this issue, and I spoke to a group of teachers also, like in Bologna, I was talking to the biggest science teacher conference in Europe. And I told them when a student asks, why am I studying algebra? Well, then the answer is simple. Humans have to bind about 1,000 gigatons of CO2 in the atmosphere, remove that in the next 50 years, and nobody knows how the hell we're going to do it. And that's why you're studying algebra. But why are we studying ethics? Why don't we just all study algebra? Well, that's because somebody might have studied too much algebra and will find a solution that has to be challenged with very strong ethics. And so basically, all studies, all industry, the whole kind of life of this generation will be dominated by this huge challenge. And again, it doesn't have to be a bad to be raised in a higher meaning. And it doesn't also mean that they are the unluckiest generation on earth, because we have many tools to make life good and comfortable. We know the facts, we know the data, we have lots of tools that previous generations have given us. And it doesn't have to mean, it wasn't better to be born 1870 in Iceland or 1918 in Iceland, or being born 1940 in Europe. So every generation has had a struggle and has had some, difficult times, and these times define them. So this is what will define this generation, and it doesn't have to be. And it would have been maybe worse to be raised into a luxurious world without having a higher meaning or a goal of doing anything. Just entering some kind of a just a groundhog day of everything just having to repeat itself into infinity.
Well, it seems, Andri Snaer, that these young people, many of them, are defining themselves as children of the revolution. They're saying, basically, there can be no climate change without system change. And I mean, I'm a product of the 60s, and we tried in our half-assed way in those days to overthrow the system, but we didn't have the tools, we didn't have a lot of the prerequisites. It seems that the young people today, Generation Z, is convinced. They are so passionate about not falling into the trap that we do, those of us who vote, time after time, of tampering at the edges, and the system that chains us and keeps us driving toward this inevitable catastrophe never gets touched.
Yes, this is the problem, of course, is then that this is a global challenge, and we need communist China, we need the kings of Saudi Arabia, we need the democratic nations or the social democrats of Scandinavia. So we need so many systems to work together, and it will be a disruption for so much that we have taken for granted. I think the generation also that lives through the coronavirus, where they live through these restrictions to save the older generation, that this generation will also see economics in a different way. They will have lived a time when basically the economy was destroyed to meet a common threat and then remade again, which we will have to do in the next 10 years or the next 5 years, is to rebuild the economies again. So I think the generation that is already with their summer jobs paying a pension fund, that money that they expect in 2070, they will see this in a totally different light, and economic theories that we grew up with as like they were gravity, it was like no, the invisible hand, and a conscious consumer, this is as fixed as gravity, and the free market is gravity. This is all just gravity. It's not questioned. I think they will question lots of things, and question the legality of things that are scientifically proven as harmful, destructive, and lethal for themselves in their old age. So I think in the short term we overestimate the progress that we can have, but in the long term I think we might underestimate them. So like you talk about your generation and things that did not come to light, but we have all sorts of things of gay marriage and all sorts of social improvements that were totally unimaginable, in the 60s, just totally unimaginable. So I think in the short term we are impatient. We want to see things change very fast, but I think in the long run, and that's what I'm writing about also in my book, what have humans done in 30 years? 30 years, when you have had to scale up something and change something, enormous change has happened in 30 years, in industry or culturally, and that is what we have to see in the next 30 years is a huge change, moon landing style change of lots of things.
Well, on that note, Andri, Snaer, I think we should wrap things up. Thank you very much for the Casket of Time, and On Time and Water, and we hope that the third pole, your stunning film, will be available soon. And perhaps next time we talk, it'll be here in Ottawa at our Writers' Festival.
I hope so. I was there in one of the first festivals. So
yes, you were
indeed. I would love to come again.
Would love to have you
and
back.
And then it's the story of the blue. Then the story of the Blue Planet is, of course,
yes,
also about children saving the world. So
and that happened in Toronto. You produced that.
Yeah,
that
in
was
staged in Toronto on the big stage there in YPT.
Oh,
and that it should have been on this in April. It should have been staged in April in Toronto, but for some reason it's not. So.
There's always tomorrow.
There's always tomorrow. There's always next year.
Thank you so much.
So great talking to you, and thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.